All right. What's going on? We are live. Appreciate you joining us right here on this Sunday morning because I don't want to wait any longer to talk some college football with you. We have so much to get into here over the next few minutes that I want to break down because what we saw on Saturday and even Friday was incredible college football action. We have so much to break down. We'll play a little game here of concern or no concern with a few teams in the top 25 that had close calls over the weekend. I'll tell you why two teams that were in the top 10 this past weekend already had their playoff hopes on life support. I'll give you a new top 10 list because I don't really trust or like the AP polls top 10. So we'll give you a real top 10 going into week number 6 here in college football. We got a lot to break down. If you want to join in the conversation, this is not just a one-way street here. You want to join in, we are live here on YouTube, right in the comment section as well. You can read your thoughts as this show does go on. Also, you can tweet me on social media, Ryan_Hickey, and the number 3 is where you can get your thoughts heard on the show coming off of an incredible week number 5 of college football. We can't start anywhere else but with one of the games of the year, games of the century, games of our lifetime. And that was Alabama taking down Georgia 41-34. That's no hyperbole. First and foremost here, the biggest takeaway, the first takeaway is that was one of the greatest, maybe the greatest game I've ever seen. I mean, you have Alabama up 28-0 in this game, jumping, blitzing Georgia. Then you have the comeback, swings of emotion, an insane fourth quarter. A great touchdown pass by Milroe to Ryan Williams, an incredible interception to seal it. You have the storylines coming in of how will Kalen DeBoer now fill in for Nick Saban in his first real test as Alabama's coach. Kirby Smart, did he have a Nick Saban problem or is it now an Alabama problem? I mean, outside of maybe the national title game in which you saw Tua hit the walk-off touchdown in overtime to give Alabama the national title back in 2017 over Georgia, outside of that game, just because the stakes were a little bit higher, I can't right now find a better game to break down from this rivalry and a better game that rivals what we just saw on Saturday night in the landscape of college football. That was amazing. But now when you look past just the incredible performance that we saw by both teams, what does it mean? What does it mean moving forward now for Alabama with this win and Georgia for this loss? Let's start with the Crimson Tide here since they got the victory. What this win means is I think that it proved that Alabama went from Nick Saban to Nick Saban 2.0. There is little, if any, drop-off right now between the GOAT of college football and his replacement. Because you look at Kalen DeBoer, this is a guy that I think proved to you on Saturday night that the job is not too big for him, that what you saw, the gaudy win and loss records, all the wins he's accumulated in past stops at Washington, Fresno State, they're all legit. This guy is not only a winner, he wins big games. And now going into this game, where you had Georgia, the first real test, coming into your building with all the questions about DeBoer and how good of a coach he is in terms of this level, at the SEC level of coaching, going against the best college football coach right now in Kirby Smart, who is desperate for a win, desperate to prove he is still the top dog when it comes to coaching, and there's not one team that owns him. He was desperate to make a really good impression, and for DeBoer and this Bama team to come out right away, put 28 points on the board before Georgia could blink, make this seemingly a laugh or go up 30-7 at halftime. But then I think equally as impressive, as Georgia makes the comeback in the second half, as all of a sudden you go from a laugher to Alabama, for Alabama, to, oh my God, are they going to blow this game? Are we about to see an historic collapse where no team in terms of a top 25 opponent has ever overcome a 28-point deficit, let alone on the road? Are we about to see the greatest collapse in Alabama football history for DeBoer, for this team, as the collapse is happening and you are now losing at home with 3 minutes to go, to come out calm, collected, nobody panic? It's funny, the broadcasters were talking about, I mean, let's just get a first down here. Let's just get the offense going. First play, what do they do? Deep shot, Milroe to Ryan Williams. I think that showed the fearlessness that DeBoer and this team has, how he's never afraid of the moment. You could even argue that they got too conservative here in the second half, or I should say maybe argue that their clock management was too aggressive and not conservative enough in the second half. Why I will defend DeBoer there is because I like the approach, and it's very Saban-like, of playing the game as it is, not playing the scoreboard. Alabama, and you heard Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit break this down and talk about it. Jalen Milroe is at his best on this offense when they're moving with pace, when they're snapping the ball every 15, 20 seconds. They want to go, 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 go. And I respect and appreciate the fact that DeBoer, as the head coach, is not playing his offense to the score of 30-7, 33-15. Like, he's playing the score to, we just got to win this possession here. And I'm just going to run this offense like the score is 0-0. We give Saban all the credit in the world every single year because he is, you could argue, maybe the only coach in college football that coaches the game every second of the game, whether it's 0-0 or 60-0. He coaches it like the game is one play away from being won or lost. And that's why you see his sideline freakouts and he's yelling at players, yelling at coaches, even though the game is in hand. He still treats every play like it's the biggest play of his career. And that's why I appreciate the offensive approach for Alabama. You could argue it helped Georgia get back in the game, sure, but I think it hurts your confidence. And I'm not sure if that deep pass is called and executed if DeBoer in the second half got conservative, got scared, and all of a sudden started saying, you know what, let's chew clock. Getting yards and getting points is not as important as winding down the clock. So we're going to really slow it down. We're going to do something we normally don't do here, and that is play a slower style, run the ball, call these plays that just take time off the clock instead of getting chunk yards. I really respect and appreciate the mindset that this Alabama team had of, I don't care what the score is, we're going to keep on playing our game. And while it did allow Georgia back in the game, I'm not sold that Alabama wins this game if they took their foot off the gas in the second half instead of keeping the pedal down. So because of that, because of how the game unfolded with the early start and then the comeback at the end, I think if you're right now, anybody else in college football, you thought, oh, Saban's gone. Look, DeBoer's a great coach, but nobody's Nick Saban. Now at least we have a chance to kind of chip into this Alabama dynasty, and we won't see the level of dominance we saw under Saban happen now under DeBoer. And that thought, 4 games into the year, is out the window. Out the window. This guy is Nick Saban 2.0. Not only with the mindset, but also with the results. Because you could say, oh, it's Sioux Falls, Ryan. Oh, it was Fresno State. It's Washington. This is the big boy at Alabama. What this guy consistently has done and proved yet again on Saturday night, wherever this guy goes, he wins. Overall now in his career, he is, as a head coach, 108-12. That's it. 108-12 in his career as a head coach. But if you want to say, well, it's Sioux Falls, it's Fresno State, fine. Let's just look at a Power 5, Power 4 conference head coach. What is his record? He is 30-3. Between Washington and now Alabama, he is 30-3, undefeated against Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian. 3 of the best coaches in all college football. DeBoer has yet to lose to any of them. And maybe the most impressive stat here is this. Because in Alabama, right, you're expected to compete for national titles. How do you compete for national titles? By beating the best teams every single year. What has DeBoer done throughout his entire coaching career? Has always beaten the best. He now has faced a ranked opponent in his career 15 times. He is 13-2 as a head coach against AP top 25 teams. The guy not only wins, he wins the big game. You have yourself Nick Saban 2.0. That is bad news for Kirby Smart, bad news for Georgia, bad news for the rest of college football. This guy is the real deal. You also see the development too, which is really impressive early on. Jalen Milroe is 10 times the passer now under DeBoer than he was last year with this old regime. And you even see now the development of young players. Look at the 2 biggest plays of this game. Milroe's 75-yard touchdown pass to Ryan Williams, a 17-year-old true freshman. And then the interception by Xavier Brown, another freshman. 2 Bama freshmen on the field in the biggest games of their careers, in the biggest moments of the game, are making the 2 biggest plays. That is unbelievable. That is unfair. Unfair that we're seeing right now these contributors so young in their career and only going to get better. Bama's going nowhere. DeBoer, if you had any doubts going into this season, going into this game, boy, were those erased. All right, that's the Alabama takeaway here. I think they have Nick Saban 2.0. On the flip side, if you're Georgia, I know the second half, Carson Beck was hot and on fire. There is no real concern now with Beck going forward. Because you look at Georgia's schedule here, this was just the first test they had at Alabama. They still have to play now at Ole Miss, which we'll get to them here in a second, at Texas, which is another big game here. They play Tennessee as well. They still have 3 top 10 opponents on their schedule that they have to go face. And with Carson Beck, the concern is right now in his year plus as a starter, this is a guy that in the biggest games of Georgia's season has really struggled, has not played well whatsoever. And now this is the second straight game going back to last year's SEC title game where he looked lost, confused, uncertain, not confident against the Alabama defense. He looked completely lost. And again, I know the second half was a lot better, but let's dive into that because first half, awful, 2 picks. He looked like just a complete shell of himself. I thought Georgia was going to pull the plug and bench him, to be honest with you. And if I was Kirby, I would have done that. But why I'm not taking a lot of stock in the second half comeback is this. You look at in the biggest drive of the game, once you go down, throw that deep prayer for a touchdown, you take the lead, Alabama answers right back. Georgia has the ball. All still, even though they're trailing, I think a lot of momentum on their side with the way they have just taken Alabama's defense to the woodshed in the second half. You had 2 throws on Carson's Beck right shoulder that he could have made that could have at least tied the game for Georgia. If they go for 2, maybe have won the game for the Bulldogs. And both throws deep to the left, underthrown. He had a touchdown. Kobe Young burned his defender. And if he just leads him out there, it's a touchdown. And we're talking about maybe a different outcome here for Georgia. Instead, the ball's underthrown, incomplete. Should have been a touchdown, missed throw by Beck, incomplete. And then the final play for Georgia offensively, better coverage by Xavier Brown, but still you lead your receiver out to the kind of back pylon. Worst case scenario, it's an incomplete pass. But you at least give your receiver the only opportunity to catch the ball. You don't give the defender any chance here, even though the coverage is better, to make a pick, and at least you keep the game alive, bare minimum. To underthrow the ball again, this time resulting in an interception to lose the game, there's real concern with Beck, man. You look at their schedule last year, how easy it was, where they really did not face a challenge whatsoever until they had to play Alabama in the SEC title game. And now you're seeing this year, too, early test. You look at the schedule still with how Tennessee's defense has played really, really well early on, how Texas's defense and overall team is looking as well. There are going to be some big-time challenges here for Georgia. And if they are trying to win their 3rd national title in 4 years, it is going to have to start with Carson Beck playing a lot better in these big games. And it's a small sample size, and it happens to be against one team. But right now, you are seeing a pattern of Carson Beck, when you need him the most, he plays his worst football. That is concerning, to say the least. That's, to me, at least the biggest takeaway here for Georgia. You got to get your quarterback back on track. You have to get him here back on track and have him play better in these big games. Last thing I want to say about this game here before we dive into a few others. There were some complaints, right, about an expanded playoff. Well, now these games mean less, and now we could see rematches and maybe even, these teams meeting 3 times. Who is saying no to these teams meeting 2 more times? You're telling me nobody wants to see a rematch in the SEC title game? You're telling me nobody would be excited if they meet for a 3rd time in the college football playoff? Sign me up. You tell me if I can have a chance to have 2 more of these Georgia-Bama games, get me there. I want that in the worst way possible. This is great. Don't tell me this is just a one-off. Give me more of these. That's why I think the college football playoff expansion is great, in part because we can now see rematches that I don't think water down the games. You saw last night the intensity, the entertainment factor was amazing, was incredible. If we see a rematch in the SEC title game and we see then maybe what is a grudge match, a rubber match here in the college football playoff, that is great for college football. That's not a bad thing whatsoever here. Give me 2 more of these matchups, please. I think we all, as sports fans, college football fans here, do deserve it. All right, let's get into here some other takeaways from these games here, because we had 2 top 10 teams go down. And another thing that was talked about with the college football playoff expansion is, oh, Ryan, the regular season's going to be watered down. Teams will lose 2, 3 times. It won't matter. These losses don't mean much anymore. I think what you just saw on Saturday disproves that theory. Because right now there are 2 teams in the top 10, or were in the top 10, I should say, that right now are in their playoff hopes are on life alert. Ole Miss, Utah. Despite suffering their first losses of the season, and it's only September, I think both teams are trying to get to the playoff here. Their hopes are in real jeopardy. Let me explain why. Let's start with Ole Miss here. Losing to Kentucky at home, 20-17. Awful loss. Awful loss. I'm sorry. You cannot, if you have true playoff aspirations here, you can't lose that game. And Ole Miss, as we know, did. But here's why it's concerning moving forward. When you look at the college football playoff, I think the biggest metric the committee needs to use is wins, who you beat. I don't care about losses. I don't care. I take that back. I care about losses, but I care more about who you beat and less who you lose to. I will forgive a bad loss if you make up for it with a good win. I think who you beat, the level of competition and how you beat them, for me, is by far the first and foremost, most important metric when it comes to evaluating these teams and discussing who's in and who's out. And so if you're Ole Miss right now, I think you have to now you have to get some ranked wins on your schedule. That's what I'll say. After losing to Kentucky, you need now some resume boosters in terms of wins. And you look at the rest of their schedule, they have, at least right now as the rankings currently sit, you have 3 teams on your schedule remaining that are currently ranked. LSU on the road, Oklahoma comes to town, and then later in November, you do face Georgia. Well, right now, if you're Ole Miss, in order to make the playoff, you need to blow out LSU, blow them out in Baton Rouge, blow out Oklahoma, because I don't think you're beating Georgia. You're not being the dogs. After what we saw yesterday from both teams, Georgia and Ole Miss, you can't tell me right now Ole Miss is beating Georgia, even though that game's at home. They're not. So if Ole Miss is going to have a second loss here to Georgia, the question then goes, well, who did they beat? And if we're talking about a mid-teens ranked LSU team on the road, okay, that's all right. Is it sexy? Is it eye-popping? No, it's fine. You beat an Oklahoma team that is right now ranked, but I mean, I could see them finishing this year at 7-5 because they have a brutal schedule. So that might not even be an impressive win by the time the year's over. But I think bare minimum here, when you look at Ole Miss, they have to blow the doors off of LSU and Oklahoma, bare minimum here, I think, to have their playoff hopes taken seriously. And then also play Georgia close. You can't lose to Georgia by 3 touchdowns at home and expect to make the playoff. You can't. If you were 11-1, maybe. But if you are now 10-2 with a blowout loss to Georgia and close wins versus Oklahoma and LSU, I think if you're Ole Miss, you're on the outside looking in. It is going to be an uphill climb here for the Rebels to make the college football playoff, even in an expanded field. And that's why I think this loss is so massive. Because the other thing now this loss does for Ole Miss is that it forces Lane Kiffin to do something he has struggled with immensely in his coaching career. And that's beat good teams. Lane Kiffin is a great character. I love him as a coach. I think he's entertaining. I think he's great for the sport of college football. And he brings relevancy to wherever he is. The one thing, though, Lane Kiffin does not do is beat good teams. He doesn't do it. There's always a lot of flash around his programs. Whoop, getting excited. There's rarely, though, any substance. Look at that offense. That offense is run and gun. They go, 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 go. But as soon as now they face a real opponent, or as soon as that fast-paced tempo offense is figured out, like we saw against Kentucky, they don't have another answer. Like if it's a baseball pitcher, right? If Lane Kiffin was a pitcher, he's got a great fastball. But if you can now time up the fastball, there's no curveball coming. There's no slider or changeup. He's a one-trick pony. And so when the speed of the offense is figured out, there's not much left right now for Lane Kiffin that he can pull off to still put points on the board. And so you saw Kentucky, after a rough opening drive, figure it out and put the brakes on this offense. I know some turnovers as well helped the Wildcats, but that was self-inflicted. But anyway, going back to what we're talking about with Lane Kiffin, he does not beat good teams. And his record as a head coach across everywhere, Tennessee, USC, FAU, wherever he's been a head coach, now Ole Miss, when he faces a team that has 9 or more wins on the season, or finishes the year with 9 or more wins, including, if you play him early on in the year. But anytime he's played a team 9-3 or better, it's pretty good. His record in his career is 4-21. Let me just repeat that again. Lane Kiffin coached teams. When they face opposing teams that have won 9 or more games in a season, they are 4-21 in those matchups. Lane Kiffin, for all the fun, all the sizzle of his offenses, what they have, what he does not do is beat good teams. And now with this Kentucky loss, what it forces Ole Miss to do is to beat good teams. That is concerning. So I don't think right now Ole Miss is beating Georgia. And if they win close at LSU and Oklahoma, the only, again, other 2 ranked opponents they have on their schedule outside of Georgia, where's the resume for Ole Miss? We're going to say, oh, great win against Wake Forest. Woo, man, that was great. Let's put them in the college football playoff for that. No, it's about who you beat. And if you get stomped by Georgia and you are slipping by LSU, which is okay, and Oklahoma that could finish 7-5 with their schedule this year, how are you getting in? That's why, if you look at Ole Miss, this loss is devastating. They are right now, I would say, already on the outside looking in of a college football playoff berth because of this loss to Kentucky. Their hopes are already in jeopardy because now it forces Lane Kiffin to do something he's never done in his career, that's beat good teams. So good luck trying to beat Georgia, but even good luck trying to beat LSU on the road and Oklahoma. 2 close wins, for me, are not enough to get you in the playoff here. They need a splash. They need to beat Georgia to get in the playoff. I don't think it's happening. And on the flip side here, because they were not the only top 10 team to lose to an unranked team, Utah. It was late last night. It was late, but Utah fell to Arizona at home, 23-10. They were the 10th ranked team in the country. The Utes were. Here's why their playoff hopes are already on the line. You look at the Big 12. And I think going into the year, we assumed it's going to be a one-bid league, right? The winner of the Big 12 is in the playoff, but the SEC, the Big 10, they're going to get a bunch of teams. And that's really it. So unless you win the Big 12 conference, your hopes are very slim of being a Big 12 member and making the college football playoff. And so far through the first month, I think the percentage of chance of a second Big 12 team getting in the playoff, I think has gone up. But now you start to look around. Okay, Utah just had a bad loss. And then you look around the rest of college football. Clemson right now is red hot. And if they can keep this up, maybe the ACC can get 2 teams into the playoff. Notre Dame is turning it around. We'll get to them here in a little bit with their win over Louisville. But if they can turn it around and be 11-1, get in the playoff. If the ACC gets 2 teams into the playoff, all of a sudden we're back to where we were preseason of the Big 12, which is you're getting 1 team. And now if you're Utah, this is twofold. Number one, this loss just opened up the floodgates because I think right now the Big 12 going in was the most competitive conference in all of college football. And I think through 1 month, there are 5 teams legitimately here that can win the Big 12 title. Utah, I'm still putting them in there. Kansas State, BYU. Look out, 5-0, Kalani Sitake. They're rolling right now. Iowa State, very sneaky team. Don't sleep on them. They're very good this year. And then Arizona, the team that just beat Utah. The Wildcats have a great offense that I think can keep on rolling here. If they get hot, watch out for Arizona. I think they're a team that could still be a player here. So there are 5 teams I think that can legitimately win this conference through 1 month of the season. I would still say Utah is the favorite. But here's my concern with the Utes. They played this game again last night without Cam Rising, their starting quarterback, who's out with a finger injury. He got hurt week 2 against Baylor. He was supposed to come back against Utah State. They held him out. But then after that, he was supposed to come back against Oklahoma State. He didn't play that game. His game time decision didn't play. He was supposed to play last night against Arizona. Game time decision didn't play. It seems like now they're trying to hold him out. They have a bye next week, and then they play Arizona State. So it seems right now, 2 weeks away, that he should be playing and be back against Arizona State in 2 weeks. But the problem is Cam Rising is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He, though, can't stay healthy. He can't stay healthy. And so I'm concerned, number one, about this timeline. Is he truly going to be back? And how well will he play once he is back against Arizona State here in 2 weeks? Can he hit the ground running, or is it going to take some time to get, his mojo back? Isaac Wilson is backup. Not great. Turned the ball over a bunch in their loss to Arizona on Saturday night. So he's not, I think, someone you can truly believe in. There's no quarterback controversy there whatsoever. So if you're Utah, you need Cam Rising back in order to win the Big 12. And right now, there's skepticism of when he'll come back, because it seems like he was supposed to be back for a few weeks and hasn't. And can he stay healthy when he is back? Because that's another problem. He's been someone that has been injury-riddled throughout his entire career. That's part of the reason why he's now there for his 7th year. He has a ton of eligibility, in part because he's missing so many years with injury. So now you have a guy that has had a propensity of getting hurt and not staying healthy, yet again is hurt. And do I expect this finger injury to be the only injury Cam Rising suffers the rest of this season? I can't right now based on his track record. So if you're Utah, this loss is devastating. Number one, because it opens up the Big 12 race now. You already suffer a conference loss early in the year. But number two, the health of your quarterback is a massive question. When he's coming back is a big question. And how long he'll be back for is equally concerning. So if you're Utah now, you were in number 10, you were in the driver's seat for the Big 12, I think your college football playoff hopes now are on the line as well, because it looks like you're going to have to win the conference to get into the playoff. And you're not winning the conference with a banged up or injured Cam Rising. That is for sure. And Cam right now, he can't be trusted, I think, to be healthy enough right now to lead Utah for the rest of this season. Ole Miss, Utah. Already 1 month into the year, I think their playoff hopes are in jeopardy. Don't let anybody tell you that the college football playoff expansion makes the regular season irrelevant. I just laid out 2 top 10 teams losing in September and why already their playoff hopes are in peril. All right, so good news here for a few teams that were at least ranked in the AP Top 25. They won. It was ugly. We had a few close calls here, but most importantly, they won. So here's what I want to do. I want to play a little game with you here of concern or no concern. Which teams that had close calls over the weekend, is there a real reason for concern? Or, hey, it's college football, 18 and 22-year-old kids. Maybe some of these close games happen, but long-term, they'll be back, they'll rebound, they'll be fine. Let's start with Penn State, Illinois. Top 20 matchup at Beaver Stadium. Penn State, though, even though this was a 19 versus 9 matchup in terms of rankings, they were an 18-point favorite, expected to win easily over Illinois. Instead, they win 21-7. I'm coming out of this game, and I'll admit I'm a Penn State fan here, but I think I'm being pretty objective when I say this, and my reasoning I think you would agree with, so let's break it down. I'm saying no concern for the Nittany Lions out of this game. Here's why. This game was close because of self-inflicted errors, for the most part, that are correctable for the Nittany Lions moving forward here. They had a few penalties that were just honestly flat out stupid. Stupid. That I think will be focused on, will be improved, will be corrected here as we do go along. The defense in the first half has been leaky for Penn State. It has been. They've let up some big chunk plays. They've allowed teams to drive. But the good news for the Nittany Lions is going forward, this is the best second half defense in all of the country. They can allow some points to be scored. They can allow some yards to be accumulated in the first half. I don't know what James Franklin says. I don't know what their defensive coordinator, Tom Allen, says. But whatever that halftime speech is, so far in every game they've played, they have come out like crazy men with their hair on fire in the second half. They have been gangbusters here, to the point where you look at yesterday's game, they allowed in the second half to an Illinois team a grand total of 39 yards, forced 2 turnovers, and allowed 0 points. That second half defense is elite, is impenetrable. And you look at when you play USC in a few weeks, you look at when Ohio State comes to town in about a month. I think those will be close games that will be decided in the second half. It's great so far for Penn State that defense in the second half has been locked down. Locked down. And the other reason I think for no concern here for the Nittany Lions, despite, again, winning just by 14 and pulling away late against the Illini, is you look at the box score, and the final score, they don't match up. Penn State dominated this game. Defensively, offensively, they ran the ball down Illinois' throat to the tune of 239 yards. Both their running backs, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, had tremendous games. Tyler Warren, their kind of do-it-all guy. He's a tight end by nature, but has played quarterback, played receiver. He does it all. Ran for a touchdown in this game. That rushing offense is legit. They're getting a real push up front. They're ripping off chunk yards. They are providing balance. Drew Aller last night did revert back to some of his old ways of looking skittish, not seeing the defense well, not making some great decisions, not putting the ball accurately out to his receivers. The good news, though, is that they have a great offensive coordinator in Andy Kotelnicki who should be able to fix those errors that Aller had that flared up for the first time this season in 4 games. And there is enough balance where Penn State is not one-dimensional. So I'm not really too concerned with their offense. I think it will get better here, especially since they played their first real tough opponent of the season. I think that'd be a good test when they play USC here in 2 weeks. The one concern for the Nittany Lions here, the one concern that is going to be a tough fix here is field goal kicking. The kicker missed 2 field goals, both pretty easy. There is now an open competition for Penn State kicker, which college kickers are fickle to begin with. Now you're having an open competition a month into the season to see who your kicker is going to be. That is concerning when you look at, again, playing a road game at USC, Ohio State coming to town. Those games, if they're close, could be decided on the left or right leg of your kicker. Penn State right now has a significant disadvantage in that area that is not a quick fix. I think everything else you saw on Saturday night is fixable and easily correctable. The one that is not, I should say, is field goal kicking. That is a real concern. But overall, Penn State, I'm going to say no concern here. When you look at their effort in a close 21-7 win over Illinois. I'm going to say no concern for Notre Dame as well as they beat Louisville 31-24. This was a great win for the Irish. And the biggest key, I think, going forward here is that you saw development in this game from the passing game. Notre Dame this season has been very one-dimensional, and that's just running the ball with both Riley Leonard and the running backs. They can run the ball well, can't pass the ball whatsoever. I thought, honestly, Louisville was going to win this game, in part because Notre Dame couldn't pass. Yeah, Riley Leonard made good decisions, be smart with the football, be for the most part accurate, 2 passing touchdowns, still not gone over 200, or another game, I should say, without 200 passing yards. But at least you saw the passing game, I think, take a step in the right direction on Saturday. But now if you're the Irish, it's about playing a complete game because the running game is not very good. It's a little concerning when you have Riley Leonard being the leading rusher with just 52 yards in this game. You need more consistency from the running game. You need to see the passing game continue to take steps moving forward here, and you have to be better with the football. It was a sloppy game for the Irish, which they turned the ball over twice. Now, good thing for them that the defense was all over Louisville, and they forced a bunch of turnovers as well that kind of helped negate the 2 fumbles that Notre Dame had. But if you're the Irish here, the biggest thing now going into the rest of your schedule is kind of like Ole Miss. You have to now start beating the brakes off of teams. Louisville is number 15 in the country, so that's a good ranked win the Irish need for their resume. Now, though, it's about style points because the only team left on their schedule right now that is ranked is USC end of the year on the road. So if you're Notre Dame between now and the last game of the season, the biggest thing you have to worry about, the biggest thing you have to focus on is style points, blowing these teams out. You're facing Georgia Tech. You're facing Army and Navy. By the way, shout out to them. Both undefeated, both having tremendous seasons. Those games looking tougher for Notre Dame than they did in the beginning of the year. But now I think going forward here, it's not going to be good enough to play Florida State. It's not good enough anymore, I think, to just win these games. You now have to start blowing teams out because if USC is maybe in the lower teens, early 20s, or maybe even unranked by the time you play them, you can't just bank on we're going to beat USC and we're going to be in the playoff. You need to help convince the committee you are one of the best 12 teams, and by doing so is by obliterating teams that you are better than. The Irish have yet to do that so far, but the good news is I think for Notre Dame fans out of this game is at least there are steps in the right direction that give you hope that that is possible. No concern here for Notre Dame after their 7-point win over Louisville. Let's go to Friday night here. Talk about Miami 38-34 over Virginia Tech, which I think they got lucky. Look, you could argue it's a catch, no catch. for me, my biggest issue is that whatever the call on the field was, because it was so close, it should have stood. I don't think in that situation you can overturn the call on the field. So I think Miami got a little lucky there. But going forward, I don't have a lot of concern for the Hurricanes, and here's why. That is one of those games, Friday night, against a team that I think is easy to overlook in Virginia Tech, that is still hard-nosed and tough, but they made a lot of mistakes. They lost to Vandy to start the year. Their record is not as good as what people thought. I think that was a dark horse team for many to make some noise here in the ACC and maybe be a dark horse contender to win the ACC. And so I think it's easy for Miami. And again, remember, we're talking about 18 and 22-year-old kids here. It's not professional athletes. The focus maybe is not where it should be. It is easy for kids to look at Virginia Tech coming in and say, oh, they stink this year. We're going to throw our jock shops on the field and we're going to win this game. I think that's what happened. And that's why I think for a large part of this game, you saw Tech out early, leading for most of it before Miami did come back here, take the lead, and then hold on for dear life at the end. But what's encouraging for me going forward here is, number one, I think this was a good wake-up call. It was a good wake-up call for Miami to kind of get their focus back and make sure they don't overlook any opponents. Number two, Cam Ward was sloppy. I don't think that's going to be replicated much throughout the rest of the season. I think this is a one-off kind of game for Cam Ward here with how poorly he played. So I think you can still feel good about the Hurricanes' offense going forward. And you look at their schedule again, a lot of the big games at home. This is one of the tricky games I circled before the year. And again, with how Virginia Tech has played, I think it's easy to overlook the Hokies going in. That's what I think happened here. I think you'll see a sharper, more locked-in Miami team going forward because of this close call. So I think Miami will be better off going forward with this test. I think they'll be fine throughout the rest of the season. USC 38, Wisconsin 21. You'd say, well, Ryan, why is a game in which USC won by 17 here part of your concern or no concern? It's part of it because of how this game played out. I have concern with the Trojans. And it's because now this is the second straight game USC has been sloppy with the football and turned it over. Miller Moss, 2 turnovers himself, 3 overall with the Trojans. They lost last week against Michigan because of turnovers, because they couldn't hold on to the football. And so now the second straight game, turnovers have plagued the Trojans. Now, again, they won by 17 in part because Wisconsin's just not very good. They're not a good team this year whatsoever. You're also facing a backup quarterback and lock, so it makes it easier to defend on defense. They won this game just because USC is so much more talented than Wisconsin is. But now you look at, again, Penn State coming to town here in a few weeks. Notre Dame coming to town at the end of the year. If they continue to turn the ball over the way they are the last 2 games, they are losing those games. Losing them. And maybe getting blown out. And so if you can't take care of the football, that is to me really concerning. I think if you're Miller Moss, you have to prove to Lincoln Riley, prove to everybody, first and foremost, you can hold on to and protect the football, keep it out of harm's way. That's why I'm concerned with USC right now. They are starting to have a trend where the turnovers are starting to now add up and become plentiful. That is concerning. What also is concerning, if we stay in the Big Ten here, is Michigan's one-dimensional offense going forward here. They hold on to beat Minnesota 27-24. They're up 24-3 going to the fourth quarter for Minnesota rattled off 21 points. Michigan got the win, but here's why I'm concerned. It's because Michigan's offense is a one-trick pony. They can only run the ball. That is it. But even with that, right, with Alex Orji, their new quarterback, they don't trust him to throw the ball. He just threw the ball in this game or attempted a drop back 18 times, completed 10 passes for 86 yards. They don't ask him to throw. They don't want him to throw. The rare occasions he does throw it, he throws it 5 yards and that's it. They're not pushing the ball down the field whatsoever. He's like a student driver. They are watching him as much as they can. They're very cautious. You got the instructor there with the brakes, and they're making sure that he's not going to get too crazy here and rein him in. This offense, I think, is scared of Orji. They're scared of him. Their own offense is scared of him dropping back and making decisions when throwing the football. And the concerning part for Michigan, number one is that I should say that they are one-dimensional. The second part, though, is the fact that even in this game, the one dimension they have done well in the past, running the ball, they didn't run the ball the way I thought they would against Minnesota. Minnesota has been susceptible to the run. They had the worst rush defense in all the Big Ten last year. It's gotten a little bit better this year, but not by much. And this is a team that allowed 272 rushing yards to Iowa last week, 206 of them to Caleb Johnson himself, one of the best running backs in all of college football. He feasted in the second half on Minnesota's run defense. And then you look at how Michigan ran the ball on Saturday. They ran the ball for just 155 yards. That's 3.6 yards per carry. Michigan, their bread and butter is running the ball. And if you're a one-dimensional offense that now is struggling to run the ball consistently, I don't know how you're winning games with still Ohio State on your schedule, Oregon on your schedule, Iowa on your schedule. I don't know how they're winning these games when, number one, they can only run the ball, and number two, they're not running the ball efficiently. I mean, even last week against USC, they won the game. Not taking anything away from them. They won the game. But they also won the game in part because they had 3 long runs, and that was really it. 3 runs of over 40 yards, 2 of them over touchdowns. The last one by Mullings, the longest one, put them in position to score the final touchdown with less than a minute to go. But outside of those 3 explosive runs, Michigan had trouble running the ball consistently against USC. And that popped up again in this game against Minnesota against a easier opponent that has struggled to stop the run. That's concerning here with Michigan for the fact that they, yet again, can't run the ball efficiently, and everybody knows that's all they're doing. It's going to be tough sledding here for the Wolverines the rest of this season. All right, so here's what I want to do to kind of finish off here. And appreciate you watching, appreciate you tuning in. We're going to try to do this every single Sunday here, so make sure if you're watching YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Make sure if you are or saw this link first and foremost on Twitter, check me out, throw me a follow. We'll do this every single Sunday morning and give you a recap and breakdown and what it means going forward from what we watched on Friday and also Saturday in college football. Finally here, I think everybody has a problem with the A people. They are maybe not as harsh or generous as they should. It feels like they just move teams up and down based on what happens and not adjust their rankings based on what they're seeing. It kind of still feels like they're only going off the preseason poll and moving teams off that. So forget the AP poll. Forget it. And we still got a long way to go before the college football playoff rankings come out. I'm giving you my top 10. This is the real top 10 here. This is a top 10 that factors in not only what we have seen, wins and losses through the first month of the season, but also how teams are playing. We have a new number 1. Move over Texas, Alabama with that win over Georgia. They catapult to the number 1 spot in the country. They have by far the best win of any team so far. They're undefeated. Alabama, number 1 here in the new Hickey top 10. Texas, they go from 1 to 2. They still have a really good win on the road at Michigan. I know it was kind of a sloppier game than it should have been against big, bad Mississippi State with Arch Manning starting. It was tremendous, by the way. But that team needs Quinn Ewers in order to win a national title, I think. He's coming back soon. Texas has done nothing right now to move down lower than 2. They are 2. I have Ohio State 3. I moved Georgia down from 2 to 4. Even though they lost, again, and the first half was ugly, you got to give them credit for a comeback. You lose in a back-and-forth game to Alabama. Georgia, for me, still stays inside the top 5. They are number 4. Rounding out the top 5, Tennessee, they didn't play. They don't move. Here's where I think the back half, though, of the top 10 is interesting. Because the top 5 is probably going to be what the AP poll looks like. But here's where mine differs, and here's where I think the real conversation has to be. I'll rattle them off really quickly here, 6 through 10. 6 is Oregon, 7 Penn State, 8 Miami, 9 Michigan, 10 Clemson. There are a lot of teams in that 6 through 10 range that either haven't played anybody, have played some people, but are like, I don't know, or have now started to heat up. You look at Oregon, again, they've not played a lot of teams, but the thing for the Ducks is they are now starting to look at the team we thought they would look like in the preseason. After some close calls against Idaho and Boise State of all teams, now they're starting to turn it on. Their defense is playing a lot better. The offensive line now is healthier and blocking like we think they should be as one of the best offensive lines in the country. Really good win over UCLA. I mean, UCLA stinks. They're probably the worst Big Ten team in the conference. But hey, you do what you had to do. Good teams beat bad teams handily. That is what the Ducks did there at 6. Penn State, again, not a great win over Illinois. Thought they'd be more dominant, but undefeated. Nice win over West Virginia to start the season. They're out there at 7. Miami moved them down 1 slot here because of that near loss to Virginia Tech. Michigan should be at 9. That's a really good one they had over USC. I know they got blown out by Texas, but like there's not another team right now, I think, that is more deserving of being ranked higher than Michigan. And same thing with Clemson at 10. I'll be honest, I wrote them off after the Georgia game. I wrote them off. I thought they were dead and gone. I even thought if you're Clemson, maybe you should consider firing Dabo Swinney. Now, what I'm about to say is this. They have not played anybody. They have not played anybody. They beat the brakes off of Stanford, off of NC State, and played a group of 5 school. So let's not get crazy and throw bouquets at the Tigers for beating teams they should beat. But what is encouraging is that offensively, they are doing to these defenses what good offenses do. Just bludgeon them. Cade Klubnik looks a lot more comfortable, a lot more confident since that Georgia game. You're seeing now the receivers, the run game step up. Everything has looked a lot better for Clemson. And while it's not come against any real opponent of consequence, and while still that Georgia game still can't be erased or forgotten about, you look at everybody else here. Ole Miss lost. Utah lost. Missouri undefeated, but they have not looked good against way lesser competition. I mean, double overtime against Vandy, pulling a close one out against Boston College. They have not looked very good so far through this season. I don't think they should get rewarded just because there's a 0 in the loss column. That's what bothers me about the AP poll. They look at and basically go by record. Okay, who are the best 5-0 teams? Who are the best 4-0 teams? Who are the best 3-1 teams? No. There could be a 3-1 team that is better than a 5-0 team. Depending on how you play, who you play, when you play them, that absolutely can be the case. Even though Missouri is undefeated, I don't care. I don't like how they have looked so far this year. That's why I think Clemson deserves to be right now in the top 10. They are playing good football, and right now you look at LSU, okay, ho-hum. There were plenty of teams in the middle that to me are just not jumping out enough to warrant being ranked higher than Clemson. That's why I have the Tigers here getting into my top 10 at number 10. All right, that'll do it here for this, I guess, first college football Sunday morning breakdown. Appreciate you joining us. Again, we're going to try to do this every Sunday around this time, 10:30 a.m., 11 a.m. Eastern. Kind of one last wrap-up, one last breakdown, one last discussion about what the results we saw Saturday mean going forward. We kind of like to do it in the morning here before NFL football does kick off. So appreciate you watching. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get alerts every time we do go live. Make sure you're following on social media, Ryan_Hickey, the number 3. We do a lot of tweets, a lot of couch football content there as well. So thank you again for joining us. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next Sunday right here on the channel.